Pickleball Diaries presents Cling on the Court with your host, Lily Brown. Let's go!
Hi everyone, welcome back to Cling on the Court. We're going to cracking some pickleball code today with our Jeff, Coach Jeff again. Thank you, Jeff. How are you?
Good. How are you? Thanks for having me back.
Always fun to chat with you. And today we're going to follow up our topic last week, and we're going to talk about the different roles, especially for women, play in the gender double and mixed double. And especially like when we form a new partnership, it's so important of the partner communication. And today we are going to more focus on talking about how do we have effective partner communication with our a new mixed double partner. So yeah, so do you want to just give some briefing of what's the nature of mixed double?
Yeah, well, I guess when we talk about game planning and tactics and strategy, specifically for mixed doubles, but just in general, it can make a huge impact on the outcome of a match. So, as we know, like pickleball matches are short. So, if we compare it to, say, tennis, like tennis, it's best two out of three sets often. And, an average tennis match, a two-set tennis match can take an hour and a half, where an average best two out of three or two game match in pickleball might take sort of roughly 20 minutes. So, it all happens very fast. So having the right game plan is super important because you don't have a lot of time to make changes. Or if you make those changes too late, the game is almost over. So like strategy and tactics and having a game plan prior to the match is just super important. So I thought we could talk a little bit about what are the considerations we should consider before coming up with a game plan, and then what do we do in terms of executing that game plan, and how do we know if it's working or not, and then what do we do if it's not working. So those are some things that we're going to talk about. And then when it comes specifically to mixed doubles, there's more challenges there and more things that you need to consider compared to sort of standard doubles, gender doubles, where maybe the court is sort of split a little bit more evenly in most cases. In mixed doubles, that's often not the case, where the left side male players often, not always, often taking up more space. So there's things that you need to discuss to make sure you and your partner have a clear understanding of how you're going to try to implement the right tactics and strategy for the match.
Yeah. So like mixed double is such a interesting topic. It's a very unique animal by itself.
Mhm.
Um, because and especially like we see so many posts on social media nowadays of people criticizing the guy over poaching. It's like, oh, the guy should just play singles by himself. Why does he even bother to have a partner? And but we all know poaching is kind of a style, and also it's a very effective strategy. And I think early communication is very important between the two mixed partners and make sure they're on the same page, right?
That's right. Yeah, you have to make sure you're on the same page and define what your game plan is. And, so I guess before we go into that, like we should talk about, and we've sort of touched on this in prior podcasts, but what goes into a game plan, because you need to know what the right things to consider are to make sure you come up with an effective game plan. So you obviously need to come up with your game plan based on your own strengths and weaknesses. So what are you and your partner comfortable doing? So like what types of shots are you best at hitting? So those would be the most obvious considerations. Um, and then the other considerations are what are the strengths and weaknesses of your opponents? Because in some cases, one strategy might be applicable to one mixed doubles team. It might not apply to another mixed doubles team. So those are some things to consider. And then you've got to also consider a little bit things like the environment. So if you're playing outdoors, if there's wind and sun, those are other things to consider. Here in Canada, where a lot of our pickleball is played indoors, those things are less impactful sometimes because if you're playing indoors, there's no wind, there's no sun, and often the side of the court you're on is pretty equal in terms of factors. Um, but yeah, when we talk about like strategizing before a match for mixed doubles, you know, you need to sort of then break it down into like what are your strengths and weaknesses and what are you comfortable doing in terms of tactics and specific shots. But you also have to consider you have to consider the strengths and weaknesses of your opponents. And in most cases, like often we say, okay, when we're serving, this is going to be our strategy. And when we're returning, this will be our strategy. But you have to be very specific about those things and tailor them to the people that are on this other side of the court. So in mixed doubles, for instance, when you're serving, you may have the strategy of, serve and then drive the third shot to the female player if you deem them to be the weaker right side player. So like serve and drive the third. But you might run into a female player who's really good at countering drives. So maybe they come from, say, a tennis background and they're used to receiving fast drives because they've come from a sport where the ball's coming at them really fast. And maybe they handle drives really well. So maybe that's not the right strategy. Maybe the right strategy is to hit more third shot drops. So that would be like one important consideration. Um, and then when it comes to, returning, sometimes you may have the strategy of, okay, we're going to return to the weaker right side player because maybe they're less threatening with their third shot. But that may allow the strong left side player or male to come forward more easily and take up space near the non-volley zone and be more of a threat. So you may want to return to that male player. Even if they have a strong drive, it might be more impactful to keep him away from the non-volley zone. So these are things you need to talk about.
Yeah, so yeah, I agree with you. So say I'm meeting a new mixed partner. We never played. So we will start with learning each other's strengths and the style. So are you always like to drive? Like I met certain players, they just don't drop. Like it's their type, their type of style of play. And and then we know, like, it's funny. I actually have women's double partner and mixed double partner. It's just like, what is drop? I just don't like to drop. So, but then and as the partner, you anticipate every time your partner get the ball, it's always a drive. But I do find the one thing is important is like we need to talk about if my partner drive, where they will be driving towards, right? And so then uh, the other partner can get the core position ready.
That's right. Yeah. And that's a perfect example. So, and to follow on that example, I played a tournament a couple of weekends ago, and in the mixed doubles, our first match was against quite a strong team, and they did happen to both come from a tennis background. So they could drive the ball well, but they also could handle speed really well. And the way I generally like to play over the last year or so is I do like to try to hit sort of heavy serves and look for the big forehand drive on the third shot. And my partner in this tournament also had a heavy serve. So we did get some sort of weaker returns that did allow me to drive. But it wasn't effective. So whether I was driving to the right side female player or the left side male player, it wasn't effective even when I hit good drives because they just had really good fourth shot block volleys. And they were actually sort of putting us under pressure with their fourth shot volleys because they were timing their volleys really well. So they're just using the speed of my drive and then having these really crisp counter-punching volleys on their fourths. And it would send back a really aggressive fourth or fast fourth shot volley. So our fifth shots were not easy because I would drive, the ball gets to the opponents really quickly, then it comes back really quickly, and you have very little time to set up to receive that ball and hit a really nice soft fifth. So it wasn't the right strategy. But part of that was like I'm comfortable driving And my partner, it's not that she wasn't comfortable hitting fifth shot drops from transition. It was just that the quality of the opponent's fourth shot volleys were such that they could overcome the quality of my drive. So in that case, it probably wasn't the right strategy. Unfortunately, after talking about it after the match, like we didn't really realize it until it was a bit too late. So we realized it more in the second game, and we did have more success in the second game because we started dropping our thirds to sort of take away their ability to impose with fast fourth shot volleys. They were now, if we hit a good third, they were forced to hit up on the ball, and it sort of slowed the game down a little bit. And although they were just the better team, they were just a highly skilled team. It allowed us to at least have a chance to get into the rally and build the point and sort of start more in neutral. So we had a little bit more opportunity and gave them more chances to miss. So, anyways, that's an example of something that you need to consider. And at that time, we didn't really know the opponents very well. So we sort of just assumed, like, hey, or I assumed, I should say, that driving my third shot would be effective because I'm decent at it, but it wasn't. But it took a little too long to realize it. So, anyways, but these are exactly the types of things you need to consider. Is whether that strategy is going to be effective. And, you have to be aware is sometimes it could be the right strategy, but you're not executing it with enough quality. So maybe driving, if we take an example of driving the third shot, it could be effective as long as your drives are low and fast. Maybe it does work. But if your drives are too high over the net and it allows the opposing team to have volleys from a high point where they can apply pressure and get the ball down, then it's not going to be effective. So sometimes the strategy could be the right strategy, but it's a question of whether you're executing the strategy at a high enough level. And then sometimes it could be that, okay, we're executing the strategy well enough in terms of like we're doing our job, but the opponents are just too good and they're countering this strategy really well. So we actually need to change strategies.
Yeah. So as you said, like it's almost like we need to have some pre set up a plan, like
Mhm.
option one to it's almost like a menu. So say we start with drive, but if the team is really good at the counter, then we go to the option B. Maybe option B is drop.
Yeah.
And the option three is only drop attack this person's backend. Uh, Certain kind of combo, if you can pre-discuss with your partner, because once on the side, you don't have enough time to do the timeout and create these new options. It's almost like you need to have these options first and then say, okay, now we move to this plan.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. You need to have a clear plan A, and what are the elements of that plan A, and you also need a clear plan B. And sometimes, again, you don't know your opponents, so you can sort of start with a plan A that is mostly based around your strengths and weaknesses as a team. But you definitely need a plan B in case that strategy doesn't work. And sort of as you said, like your plan should mostly revolve around like at least the first two shots. So you think of your plan when we're serving. Okay, when we're serving, what is our plan? And then what are we doing when we're returning? And you need to consider at minimum sort of the first two shots of the sequence when the point begins. So when you're serving, like what kind of third shot are you going to hit after the serve? Like you should also have an idea of what you're trying to do with your serve, because someone might have a clear weakness on their forehand or backhand, or maybe like a fast lower serve is more impactful than a heavy topspin arcing serve. But the third and the fifth shot are so critical when you're the serving team. So, okay, when I hit my third, where am I hitting it? Why am I hitting it there? And where should we position ourselves on our fifth shot? So, and then what type of fifth do we want to be looking for? And so at least the first two shots of the sequence after the serve. And then same with when you're returning, you need to consider where are you returning? And you should have a good understanding of why you're hitting a specific return. And then also like, what are you looking to do on your fourth shot based on the likely response? And because those first two shots in the sequence really change the complexion or determine the complexion of how the point unravels. And that's why having a clear game plan about those first couple of shots is going to be really critical. And then if you can implement those first two shots really well, after that, you might have like a more general strategy for when you get to the non-volley zone. If all four players are at the kitchen, it's like, okay, once we're at the kitchen, if we get past those first two shots, what are we trying to do? Who do we want to hit to and why? Where do we want to hit on that particular person? What do we do if this happens? So you should have those things predetermined if possible before the match, and then maybe a bit of a plan B. And the challenge again is like if your plan A isn't working, it's like you have such limited time to figure out a plan B. So you need to have that plan B in your back pocket so that you can adjust quickly. And then this also ventures into another topic, which is, it's sort of the same topic because it's strategy and tactics, but, when do you use timeouts, to help sort of slow the momentum down if you don't have the momentum and discuss what you need to change? But yeah, they're super critical because, in the same tournament that I played, um, like the game plan was so impactful, like having the right game plan when we did execute with the right game plan or as we intended, it was really effective. And then there's sometimes like, okay, are we sticking to the game plan? So the game plan might be really effective, but both players need to follow that game plan. And sometimes if that certain game plan is more about being sort of patient and playing more of a traditional, like soft, slowing the game down type of game plan, you really need to make sure both players are in tune with the game plan and trying to execute the associated shots with that game plan. Because a game plan, if it's working, you got to stick to it. But
Yeah.
if one player is sort of venturing outside of that game plan, it can sort of throw things off a little bit.
Yeah, great. And so now we're going to talk about very unique topic of the mixed double of the guys row. How much percentage of the court coverage, how much the guy should take, right? Like my personal take is it varies. It depends on the guy's capability. It's so funny. I remembered in the last week Clean Cup, and we did a huge interclub tournament championship. So there's some some guys, they're really good at gender double, but they're kind of new into the mixed double. And so they play like the men's double.
Mhm.
And and then I saw their court coverage. They're all like young, early 20s. So, and I will say, it's not playing with me, but I'm just observing. And I would say, why don't you take more court? And and then they will say, "Oh, I feel bad. I don't want the girl missing out shots. I feel bad. I want to have the girl involved and play more." And I would say, "But you want to compete to win, right? Like it's not a rec game. That doesn't matter. You don't need to feel bad." And also some guy feel bad when they feel their female partner is getting attacked. But that's also the nature of the mixed double game.
Mhm.
So what I'm saying is like, of course, you're the expert. You play a lot of mixed double games. Like so many things are the norm. But when the players, even good players, play more gender double in the past, when they go into the mixed double, they find they don't know their role really well.
Yeah.
So, do you mind kind of shed some light on that?
Yeah, it's exactly how you started or introduced this idea is it really depends. It depend like every set of partners is different. And it like if we're talking about how much space should the left side male partner take in a mixed doubles setting, it really depends on their movement skills and their athleticism and how effective and how much of a threat they can be. So, of course, and it also depends on the female's level or the right side player's level, because, again, if I use the example of the first match I had in this recent tournament, both players, the female partner and the male partner, were both very, very capable players. Um, and they actually coincidentally both had forehands in the middle because the right side female was left-handed and the left side male player was left-handed, or sorry, it was right-handed. So they had both of their forehands in the middle, and they were both really good players. They could both drive the ball, they could both counter well, they could both speed up off the bounce. Um, so it was really challenging. So that's one instance where the level of the two partners in mix was actually, and they were both high level, was quite even. So that might be an example of where the left side male player doesn't have to take as much court because A, his partner was left-handed, so her forehand was in the middle, but also B, she was just a really high level player who was very athletic and moved well and was very offensive when she got the chance. So they could play more traditional. But if the male left side player does happen to be really athletic and also very capable in terms of offense or creating offense, then of course they should take more space. But you have to really to talk about this as you said before the match because some left sometimes like there's certain players who think their level might actually be higher than it is, right? And this happens a lot in mixed doubles, is the male partner actually thinks they're maybe more capable than they actually are. Especially if we're talking about like more at the like say 3-5, 4-0, 4-5
Yes.
level. Sometimes the male player thinks they should be playing what we consider to be standard mixed doubles and taking up a lot more space, but they're actually not adding a lot of additional value or offensive threat by taking balls that are more in the right side player's territory. And this is why it's good to talk beforehand because the female partner, maybe the male partner is like, okay, I'm going to try and take 70% of the court. So when balls come through the middle, even if they're slightly towards your side on the right and they're coming towards your backhand at the kitchen, I'm going to take more of the court. And the female partner should hopefully have something to say about that and be like, hey, listen, you should only do that if there's value to it. I actually like my backhand dink from the right side. When I get a ball in my backhand, I'm actually really good at dinking back to the middle of the female partner on the other side. Like I can put it at their left foot on their backhand, or I can move them around really well, or I like to speed up off the bounce with my two-handed backhand, So there may not be a benefit to the male sometimes taking up a lot of space. And if that male partner's not super mobile, if they're not really a threat when they come over and take balls that are on the right side female's territory, then all they're really doing is taking themselves out of position on the next shot and creating a lot of instability and uncertainty. So all that to say is every situation is different. Every combination of partners is really different. Myself, when I play, here in Canada, I play at the mixed open or mixed pro level. But, I'm getting older and my mobility is actually it's like slowing down a little bit as I age and I'm coaching a lot than I used to. So, like, I'm not as fit as I was, say, 2 years ago. So my mobility is not at where it once was. And I need to recognize that. And I need to communicate that to my mixed partner, like, hey, I can take a lot more balls in the middle because my forehand is my strength. So I can take maybe 60% of the court. It all depends, but like maybe I can take about 60% of the court, but I'm not one of these guys who can take as much court as some of these more athletic, younger, fitter, skilled players at the same level I'm competing. Some of those guys can take, a ton of court and they can do it really well because they can get to the ball. They can hit really good neutralizing dinks or speed ups. They can also recover really quickly to get back in position after the shot. I can't do that as well as some of these guys compared to what I was used to be capable of. But again, these are things that you need to talk about, and these are the types of considerations and discussions you should have with your partner to make sure that you have a clear understanding of who's taking what and hopefully be able to implement a game plan that works for you and your partner and works well. But again, if you have the wrong game plan or you have the wrong idea about your strengths and weaknesses, it can really backfire.
Yeah, I will agree. Like, uh, just it made me think about a game I played in the past. And so me and my mixed partner recognize on the other side, the guy will go into all sorts of lengths to take the third. So,
Mhm.
and then so our game plan is always return to the females players' left foot,
Yeah.
and we bait the guy out of position, and then the next ball we go to his backhand, and
Yeah.
I shouldn't say backhand, but go to the longest distance, make him go out
Mhm.
of position. And it's so funny. They keep losing the point, and then the same time, on the other side, the male player just couldn't recognize that was the bait shot. Like he just constantly want to take every shot. And I also find, especially in the lower bracket mixed play, and the guy have a lot of guy have super ego, thinks, oh, they're Ben Jones. They can move around, take all sorts of shots. So yeah, like and I do think what you said is very right. And go back to our first question of communication. What's a strength? Like if the female player has a backhand or not. And also if she has a backhand, also will affect the male partner's game plan. If she has a backhand and he doesn't need to overpoach, but if she doesn't and he has to, right?
That's right. And yeah, because some like if the right side player, this applies for gender doubles or mixed doubles, if the right side player or the right side female and mixed has a really good backhand at the kitchen in terms of, being able to neutralize and keep the ball really low, or maybe they have an offensive two-handed roll so they can actually roll their topspin dink with topspin and they can place it really well. If they're really consistent and really effective, there's no need for the male player to come over and take up space, because that female player or that right side player can easily just keep the ball going back to the other right side player and move the ball around, keep it low, create some uncertainty on the other side. And it allows the left side male partner to sort of stay more in a position where they can maybe be more ready to pounce if the ball comes sort of as a pop-up or an easier ball, and they don't have to take themselves out of position as much. It also creates less confusion. If the right side player can take more balls on their backhand and there's less, shifting from left to right from both players, it's a little easier to stay in position and recover after each shot. And if you do get attacked or if you do receive a pop-up, you're more likely to be in good position. But exactly, like now in mixed or gender doubles, often the right side player does have a weak backhand. It's sort of an awkward shot to hit as a right-handed player on the right side. When you receive a ball in your backhand, it sort of like traps you. You don't have a lot of options or a lot of space when you hit back to the other team. So a lot of players just do have a weak backhand in that scenario. So if that is the case, and you also have a left side player or a left side male partner who's really good at coming over to take those, by all means, they should, because you're sort of relieving that right side player of a really challenging situation or challenging shot. And maybe you can be more effective by taking those. But if your right side partner, whether they're male or female, has a great backhand at the kitchen, then just let them take it and let them do their thing.
Yeah. So do you agree in the mixed double game, the female player should stay a bit behind the guy? Let the guy
Um,
have the first dip,
do you mean like on third shots or when they're at the kitchen?
like overall.
Yeah, well, it depends. Like, I think again, it depends on what you've communicated beforehand. So I think like, um, if you're playing with a left side male partner who has a really good forehand drive that creates a lot of unforced errors or a lot of easy pop-ups, um, then in that case, on the third shot after the serve, you may then say, "Hey, listen, I'm going to take a lot of these thirds because my forehand drive is just working really well. So make sure you give me some space and back off a little bit." So that could be a scenario where it applies. But if the male partner doesn't have like a crushing forehand drive that is a huge benefit to the team, maybe in that scenario on third shots, you encourage the right side player, the right side female player to take more of the thirds, which might allow the left side player to sort of move forward and take up more space at the kitchen. Now, when you're at the kitchen, again, it depends what your strategy is and what you've communicated before the match. So if the left side player, the left side male is going to take a lot of space, then yeah, the right side female may want to sort of like play off the kitchen line a little bit to give room for that left side player to come over. Um, but if that's not the case, if the left side player is going to stay put more, or the right side female partner really likes their backhand dink at the kitchen and is really competent and confident at it, they're not going to want to play off the line or play behind the line too much because they need to be ready to take more balls around the middle of the court you
Yeah.
know so the challenge is like if the right side female plays off the line a little bit or plays behind the line or behind the male a little bit, what can happen is sometimes they get surprised by the dink that they're receiving at the kitchen, and if they're too far off the line, the farther back you go or the farther away you are from the non-volley zone line, the harder it is to be effective with your own dink, because now you're farther away and you have to hit the ball into a really small space. So your dinks become like ineffective. So they don't pressure the other team at all. But the other thing is, if you're too far off the line and someone angles their dink out wide, you're now farther away from that ball. So you may be stretched on a ball that wouldn't typically stretch you because you're playing in too far back of a position. You're recovering too far off the line and it opens up the angle. The other thing is, if you tend to play off the line too much, and the other team does give you a small opportunity by popping up their dink just a little bit, you may not be in a position to capitalize and pressure with a aggressive volley because you're playing too far off the line, and then you
Hmm.
miss that chance to attack because the ball starts to get lower. Whereas if you had stayed at the line and the ball gets popped up, you're in a position to sort of speed up a volley from above the net slightly. So again, it all depends on the combination of partners and trying to define these things really well before a match starts. One of the challenges is if you don't know your partner that well, you may not know how they play. So you should ask them like how they like to play at the kitchen, like how do they like to position themselves? Are they more of like a patient player who likes to just try to neutralize? Are they someone who likes to be a bit more offensive with their dinks or take away time and take away space? But yeah, these are good conversations to have prior to the match beginning.
Yeah, so with that, like we're talking about the communication and then like in match communication and the adjustment. So what do you think will be a good time? Say, okay, we're going in with the game plan. At what point we should say, okay, the game plan is not working, let's readjust. Like how
Yeah.
many points you should lose and then say, okay, it's time to change.
I think definitely it's hard because when you start a new match, sometimes it's a matter of just like sort of working yourself into the match. So regardless of strategy, it's like you just have to feel the ball,
Yeah.
like that, just getting a feel. Because sometimes it's hard to execute with a perfect level of quality and effectiveness at the beginning of the match. Even if it's the right game plan, it just takes a few points to work yourself into the match. Which is why it's important to have a really good warm up prior to the match starting. But that's maybe another topic. But I would say, just like before the halfway mark of the first game, so the momentum can easily go with you. So things could be going really well for you, but sometimes they can go really well for the other team, and that momentum just like gets away from you and the other team gains momentum. I would say definitely before the halfway mark of the first game, you've got in a best 2 to 3 match, in games to 11, you have 2 timeouts per game typically. So I would say, if you're sort of like lose 3 or 4 consecutive points, or like the score is sort of lopsided early in the match, like if you're down by a margin of 3 or 4 points, like it's probably wise to use that first time out earlier in the match rather than later, um, to slow the momentum down of the other team. And then just ask your partner, like, hey, like, what do you think of our game plan? Like, is it working? And it may be like, yeah, it's working when we execute it. We just need to execute better. Okay, great. That's a good time to call a timeout, take your breath. Okay, let's see if we can pick up our execution. Or, hey, like we're executing pretty well, but it's not working. We need to do something different. What do we need to do? We need to hit more to that partner, or we need to slow things down a little bit. Like, let's drop more. Or, hey, I noticed when we drove the ball more, we were like creating more errors or more pop-ups and weak volleys. So let's see if we can impose our game a little bit more. So I would say, yeah, trying to like within the first sort of third of the game, like before the score gets to 5 or 6 for either you or your opponents. I mean, sorry, I should say for your opponents. If you're at 5 or 6 and they're behind, you just keep the momentum going. But if your opponents get on like a 3 or 4 point run, or you're down by 3 or 4 points pretty quickly in the match, call a timeout, change the momentum or stop the momentum, and see if you can adjust your game plan if needed.
Yeah, thank you. So I think like with that, it kind of give a template for a new partnership to form, and we need a thorough communication. And yeah, I like sometimes it's so funny. Like I played a new game, and my partner will say, "Okay, let's just play," and I really don't like that. And then when you play with somebody new, I find it will be more comforting, like have some brief conversation, talk about exactly like what we just mentioned. Then
Mhm.
we're not going to the game with a surprise. And often it's not like the surprise from the opponent, you get surprised, the shock from your partner. It's like,
Yeah.
oh wow, like I didn't expect that shot coming to that way, right? So yeah, I think we would love to spend more time talk about the partner communication, which is so important in all sorts of game, even in rec game, when we want to enjoy the game more, right? Like we rather than just hitting the ball, we need a plan. So, but I think we're running out of time today. Thank you very much,
Yeah.
Jeff.
I'll just add
Uh,
one quick point to that. I
yeah,
think you can sneak it in here is sometimes even if your game plan isn't optimal and it's not the most potentially the most effective plan, just having a plan gives both partners something to think about and something to focus on. And just being more focused because you have a tactical plan, that in itself can improve execution compared to not having a plan. Then you're left sort of wandering and you're
exactly.
sort of you're like maybe less engaged, or you're more indecisive, and indecision in pickleball can be deadly. So yeah, just having some sort of plan just gives you something to think about, and having something to think about or follow can just direct your focus and improve performance. So even if it's not the best plan, some sort of plan is always better
Yes.
than none. Yeah.
Amazing. If somebody doesn't have a plan, I will lead them into this podcast.
Yeah, there you
Listen
go.
to the podcast. Let's have a plan.
That's right.
Thank, thank you so much. We're running out of time. And yeah, the audience, please follow us and like us on the social media, all sorts of podcast platform and YouTube. And looking forward to seeing everyone next week. Thank you.
Thanks, Lily. See you soon.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Bye.